top left corner.
It
Live on
is.
custom live streaming service.
It's live now. Yeah, it's going now.
It's
Brilliant.
live. Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, to the first of our Back from the Brink online talks. Just to give you a very quick intro to Back from the Brink, we are a National Lottery funded conservation programme looking at England's most endangered species. But a big thing about what we want to do here is highlight new voices in conservation, young voices in conservation. And so we have with us today the wonderful Danny Wild, self-proclaimed Queen of the Squirrels, and she's going to be talking to us about using the internet to tell conservation stories online, something that I know the conservation sector has been struggling to get them heads around for the past year. So I think there's probably a load of really interesting information that certainly Back from the Brink can learn, other organisations can learn, we can all learn from this. So I'm delighted to introduce Danny.
Hello. I am just going to share my screen. It's asking for a password. Are you able to see my screen? Fantastic. Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about my adventures photographing squirrels and how these animals have inspired people to care for nature. So my name is Danny. I am a wildlife photographer. I have a degree in zoology, and since graduating, I have been on a mission to excite people about nature. At university, I was given the impression that new science getting into the news and magazines was a great way to teach people about nature. Okay, cool. So I went to the rainforest. I studied spider monkeys, and we discovered they are pretty epic. They are frugivores, which means they eat fruit, and they actually eat a massive variety of different types of fruit. And they poo seeds, and these seeds become saplings. And these saplings become large trees that provide stability in the ground, provide food, and a home for so many species. And spider monkeys move big distances through the forest. And so we found their role in seed dispersal has the potential to move seeds around the rainforest. So spider monkeys are rainforest architects. They can help grow forests. And so our really cool science got published in a paper. And I don't really understand that, even though I helped write it. And it's quite frankly a bit boring to a non-scientific person. I realized scientific papers do not inspire people to care for nature. I went back to the drawing board. I want to get people who don't notice nature to notice nature. At the same time, Pokemon Go was very popular. Pokemon Go was an app. You walk around the real world and you look for Pokemon on your phone. Millions of people were walking around finding Pokemon. Kids were able to recall different Pokemon. They knew where to find them and they knew where to find them and when to find them, just like a person who watched birds. But Pokemon aren't real animals. So I made an app with the same principle. You walk around the real world and you find digital animals. But these animals were based on British wildlife. You needed to go out into the real world to find these digital animals. You needed to go out in the evening to find nocturnal animals like bats, and you needed to go out during the day to find diurnal animals. I took the app to some game conferences and learnt that kids aren't that interested to play a game that's based on real animals when there's already one based on fantasy animals. So I was sort of failing at my mission. I needed to think of a new way to inspire people to care for wildlife. I wondered whether I could use my hobby of wildlife photography. Before COVID, I went to Sweden, and well, I basically got stuck. I ended up living in Sweden for 6 months, and I was living in this isolated village called Kaltarask, which is about an hour from the city Skellefteå in northern Sweden. And this small village had a population of about 15 people over the age of 60. And next to the village was a forest with ancient trees that creaked in the wind. And there were squirrels. Red squirrels are extremely charismatic. They have these long ear tufts, thick winter coats, and very funny personalities. They are tree squirrels and will create a dray on a tree branch or in the trunk of a tree. And this is where they give birth to baby squirrels called kits. To survive the winter, they cache food. This is when they collect nuts and seeds around the forest and they bury it. But they usually forget where they've hidden it, or another squirrel finds another squirrel's stash. And squirrels are actually very important for seed dispersal as well. And so I spent hours watching these squirrels. I was able to recognize and identify each of the squirrels. I knew who was male, female, who was dominant, who was greedy, who was shy, and so I gave them names. This one was Little One. I created different setups to photograph a unique perspective of their lives. This is an abandoned timber truck. It was last used in the 1960s and was used to distribute timber that was cut locally across Europe. And it's been left in the forest that entire time. I set up a camera with a motion sensor. I crawled in through the window and I waited for the squirrels to take their own photos. The squirrels would detect the sensor from their motion and the camera would take photos. So I didn't actually need to be anywhere near the camera when the photos were being taken. And so the squirrels were essentially taking selfies. Unfortunately, one squirrel I met, Remy, got hit by a car. She was one of my favorite squirrels because she was one of the most confident and she eagerly tried all my different camera setups. And somewhere in the forest, she had babies. So I went to look for them. The next morning, I found them. I made sure they were definitely Remy's, and I waited in the forest for 7 hours, and no adult squirrels went up the tree. And so I started to feed them every day. As I got to know them, I realized that they actually have very unique personalities. And so I gave them names, of course. This is Baby Pear. He likes to eat pear. And he was also very confident. Chiburashka was Baby Pear's sidekick, but he was a little nervous, but he was always following Baby Pear. Baby Moomin was the lightest coloured, and I have a feeling she might have been female, and she liked to eat peanuts. And Little Flame was very nervous and the smallest. And one day I put my microphone in front of Baby Pear, and the video went viral. "15 million people saw that video, and I received hundreds of messages. People were sending me photos of their local squirrels. People were asking me where to find squirrels and how to watch them. People were drawing Baby Pear. Overnight, I had connected millions of people to nature. And I realized people who don't know a lot about nature like to follow stories about individual wild animals with funny names. They were interested in my experiences with the squirrels and how I connected and interacted with them. My photography transformed into sharing stories about the personalities of individual animals, and people were inspired to go to their local forests and find squirrels. These two squirrels are called Dada Elf and Ghost, and I was with them in November in a very snowy Sweden. We take our local nature sometimes for granted. Somewhere near you is a park with a friendly robin or a funny squirrel. Sometimes we just need to spend a little more time watching and look a little bit closer, and we will start to discover wild animals have their own characteristics and personalities. And when we form a connection with wild animals and with a particular place we like to watch nature, we see the importance in protecting it. The forest with the squirrels is under threat from deforestation, from the timber trade. And I'm going to use my photography and the stories of the squirrels who live there and my audience of squirrel lovers to save and protect the forest. Even that wonderful forest full of squirrels, birds, and many other species is in danger. It is important to share the stories, to engage people, because we are a lot stronger and we act together as a force to save and protect nature. But how? How do we get people to notice nature? In the second half of this talk, I will discuss some tips and tricks I use for photography and social media to share conservation stories. How do you spread a message to people? There are so many social media platforms that can reach billions of people, but each has their niche. Each platform has its own way of sharing this content to people. For example, to see new photos from someone's Instagram, you have to either follow them or follow someone who shares that photo on their story. Twitter is different in that you can retweet that image and it will appear in all their followers' timelines. This is why it is easier to go viral on a platform like Twitter. How people perceive followers is also very different. People will happily press the subscribe button on YouTube, but following an extra person on Instagram is for some reason a big deal. For some reason, people are obsessed with keeping the number of people they follow low, probably because they can easily see how many people someone follows. But the number of follows you have is not important. What is important is how much engagement you get, how many interactions you get, how many likes, comments, and views. It's all about engagement. Even a lot of big accounts have what is labeled as dead followers. These are followers that don't engage or even post anymore due to inactivity and algorithms. Another thing to consider is, do you have a brand name? I go by Danny Connor Wild on all my social media platforms. It's short and easy to remember, but some don't have that. Some will have just their own name, but I like to go with Wild at the end. It makes it clear sort of what I do. And income. Can you make money from social media? And is it an ethical way of making an income? Now I'm going to quickly go through each social media platform that I use and some tips on how to get people interested in nature. So, Instagram. As a wildlife photographer, I obviously use Instagram a lot. It's all about images and visual content. What I have discovered is that people really like bright, funny, colorful images. But when people are on Instagram, they tend to scroll for only a few minutes. But the average person spends an hour on Instagram a day. This means people open Instagram roughly 20 times a day. So they want quick content. So Instagram is about grabbing people's attention immediately. Bright, colorful photos where the subject is very clear is best, because obviously you're viewing it on a phone screen, which is quite small. So a dark photo of a small bird in the frame will simply not do as well as a brightly colored frame-filling photo of a bird. Most people don't read captions, unfortunately, but we usually swipe right if there are multiple photos uploaded in a post. I view Instagram with two audiences: the existing followers who you need to please with new engaging photos. And then the second audience is the potential new followers. These are followers who view your profile. It is important that they like how your photos look collectively. For this reason, I use apps like Planner, where you can plan exactly how your feed looks. Every few weeks, I change a color theme. I am currently having the one on the left, which is an orange, black, white. But I have also had blue, black, yellow, white in the past, and dark and light. I try to have a bird and then a squirrel and have a bit of difference in my Instagram, but I've recently noticed that my squirrel photos will get double the amount of likes than any other wildlife photo. That's the issue with having a squirrel audience. For 10,000 followers, you should aim for about 1,000 likes per an image. However, as I said, my squirrel photos tend to get double or triple that to my other photos. Now, Twitter. Twitter is an interesting one because it's usually for writing and very small pieces of text, but I still like to share photos. One landscape photo or two portrait photos do best. Short captions, a sentence long, that will grab people's attention. If you want to tell a story, do it in multiple photos in a thread, but keep each individual post with only a sentence or two. I personally don't find hashtags or tagging people to be useful, but I know a lot of people do it. Twitter has a big audience for cute photos and short videos. I started using Twitter because I was told things blow up quickly, and it did. So let's talk a bit about going viral. My video of a baby squirrel received almost 16 million views, and most of those views were in the first few days. I had celebrities sharing the video, such as John Boyega, and the video was out of focus, poorly exposed, and it was not composed at all. I recorded the video simply for the audio, and that's what Twitter liked. So I posted it on Twitter with a simple title, exactly explaining what the video is about. Microphone, baby squirrel. So people stop, they listen, and it's utter cuteness. So people like and retweet. The caption did not have anything complicated or forceful, like save the squirrels, save the wildlife, but it was quick, it was engaging, and people were immediately a little bit more connected to nature. Some went to view my other content and they learnt about the story and learnt a bit about squirrels. But the main important thing about this video was that the moment of engagement or the funny bit happened immediately. As soon as you started listening, it started squeaking. You didn't have to wait a few seconds for something to happen, so it immediately grabbed people's attention. YouTube. I started using YouTube last year. I am still learning how to use this platform. But my analytics have recently shown that a video about 6 to 8 minutes long are perfect for an engaging video, and people actually end up watching only about 2 minutes. However, there are many successful YouTubers who have made this their full-time career, and they make 20-minute, 1 hour long vlogs and videos, and people are very engaged in them and watch the full thing. But I have learned that a 1 minute summary intro at the start of the video really helps to grasp people's attention. This is the intro of my short film, The Squirrels and Me.
My name is Danny. I'm a wildlife photographer and I name squirrels. Ghost, Chiborashka, Little One, Timo, Mama, Mojo, Dada Elf, Moomin, Remy, and this, hello baby pear, how are you, is Baby Pear. This is the story of how I rescued 4 baby squirrels and befriended a family of wild squirrels in northern Sweden.
So that film I recently published about a month ago, and I started working on that film 1 year ago. So that 30-minute film took me about a year to film, produce, develop the story, and it received an unexpected amount of views, which led to more subscribers, and I now have an audience on YouTube. And so I'm really keen to work more on YouTube videos and do educational videos such as tutorials about taking photos, editing, also videos about trips. But I really enjoyed creating a short cinematic film that tells a story and has a conservation message at the end. With this video, I made it 30 minutes, which I thought was quite long for a YouTube video. But my analytics have shown that most people watch half, which is pretty good. The main reason this video did well is because it got shared on the homepage of Reddit. So even though that I didn't have many subscribers, someone saw it and enjoyed it and then shared it on another social media platform. And Reddit is another one that I think is very good, and I haven't yet really used it. Also, I know TikTok is also very popular with some animal videos, but I have no idea how to use that either. Facebook. Facebook is a tricky one. People are using it less and less, and it's mostly used for your mum and your dad. Well, people who use it mostly to keep up with family. It's not really for finding influencers, and a lot of people don't use it. And so I don't directly post on Facebook. Whenever I post on Instagram, it directly posts to Facebook. And I don't really prioritize it as a social media platform, but I still think it's great to have it there, especially as it's so easy to just click share on Facebook on Instagram. And so I haven't really had much success with it, but I know people who have had thousands and thousands of followers, but it's not a platform I prioritize. Next, I want to talk about the use of photography. I always try to photograph wildlife at eye level. For squirrels, this often means getting down to the ground and sitting, well, lying on your stomach. But for some species, it was very difficult to photograph them at eye level, such as a bird in a tree. I use different methods to capture emotive images, from the use of camera traps in the top left and I use different photography techniques, shooting at different light, such as golden hour, such as the bottom left. And I also create different setups, such as the jumping squirrel. How I did that was I created 2 perches. One perch had food and a bucket underneath it, so the squirrels couldn't climb up. And then the other perch had an easy way to access them climbing up. They would climb up, they would see the other perch, which had some peanuts and sunflower seeds, and then they would jump. And I would sit inside, comfortably warm in the dining room, and I would photograph them jumping between. I love colour and light, and I will often look through a lens without a subject just to try to find a unique way to use light. People are most engaged with cute and funny, and squirrels are perfect for the job. Their character, ear tufts, and fluffy coat makes them very pleasing to the eye, especially when they're in a very snowy Sweden. I often like to fill them in the frame and have a clean, clear, soft background by using a low aperture. Working on a specific project over a long time is a great way to build a story. I worked with these squirrels for 6 months. I was able to identify each individual and understand their unique characteristics. So, for example, top left is Little One, because he was a small black male. Top right was Blondie, she was a female squirrel. And the bottom was Remy, who was the baby squirrel's mother. And they each have very different personalities. Remy was very bold and quite a confident squirrel, but Little One was shy. He was submissive and he would wait for the other squirrels to feed or test different photography setups that I had. And so he was always alert and watching what they would do, probably because he was younger. I discovered people really I really discovered that people enjoyed learning about their names and their personalities and their characteristics. Another thing people seem to enjoy is seeing the human-animal interaction. People want to learn about the relationship I have with the squirrels and the forest. And so I would position my phone against my rucksack and just film me photographing squirrels and interacting with them. And these short video clips always did really well on social media. People just like seeing someone smiling at a wild animal in a beautiful place, and those videos always did really well. I brought a face and personality to my photography. At the end of the day, being a wildlife photographer is running a small business. My brand, I guess, is Danny Connor Wild, and my mission is to promote a connection with wildlife. People enjoyed my work and the human side I brought to it, and I was able to sell calendars, do video collaborations with BBC Earth, and start a Patreon where my supporters will pay extra for articles, digital downloads, early access content, and a free calendar. And so 6 months ago, I was able to make this my full-time profession. Unlike traditional wildlife photographers, my income is predominantly due to my presence on social media. I do not write articles for magazines or sell images to stock agencies like most wildlife photographers. At the moment, I feel like I am on a good path. I am motivated and have ideas that I want to work on, such as ebooks, other different digital content, more YouTube videos, etc. I hope you have enjoyed hearing about my journey so far, and I also hope you've learned something about how to use the internet to share nature online. Thanks for listening.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Danny. I'm just going to take you off Spotlight now. Hello, everyone. That was so good. I loved all those images. Some of those are just so incredible to capture those and then be able to share them with everyone. We've had loads of really great questions, which is brilliant. So just going to crack on straight with those and put them to you and see if you can give some good answers for them. Right. So the first one's from Lisa Jones. What happened to your Pokemon type app? So Pocket Pals, I think they're referencing there.
Yeah, so we changed the product a little bit. So instead of it being a app where you walk in the real world, we created an augmented reality digital trail. And so we had various signs that you scan with your phone, and then a digital animal will be revealed on your phone, but in the real world. And so we're now having this trail at different locations. And our first one will be in London in just a few months, actually. So you'll be able to go to the new refurbished Camley Street at London Wildlife Trust site and find 5 digital animals.
Awesome. Sounds brilliant. Okay, the next question is from Rana, and they've asked, who does Danny think are her core audience at the moment? Which demographics will she aim for? And what's the objective for the audience? Awareness or more?
So before my video went viral, I had a predominantly photography audience. So existing wildlife photographers, and it was more about, at the time, sort of sharing tips and advice. And a lot of wildlife photographers are older males. So when I went viral, I actually had a massive shift in my audience. Now it's almost 50-50 female male. And in terms of the demographics of each category, so on Instagram, it goes over 10 years, it's pretty much the same. Which is great because it means I'm engaging, not just wildlife photographers who are an older demographic or male. I'm engaging young people as well as old people. It was actually quite interesting to see how the viral video impacted the locations of where people follow me. So I've got a big audience in the UK, where I'm from, America, Germany, and China. So a really different demographic, which is to me quite surprising. But at the same time, you find red squirrels in North America, a different subspecies, and Germans for some reason love red squirrels. So that audience reflected in my calendar sales last autumn. In regards to how I want to take this demographic and this audience, I want to keep sharing the conservation messages, but almost quite subtly in my photos, because I think there's been some recent controversy with sort of Extinction Rebellion and how they share their messages, and it's very powerful and intense. And what I'm doing is almost softer. And I still believe in those same beliefs, but it's a more subtle insight into conservation. And at the end of the day, I'm just encouraging people to go out to find local nature and be outside more.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We had some really interesting accidental viral success on TikTok where we launched a video on there. But I think probably something like 95% of the viewers were American, even though it was a video about feeding birds in a very English-looking garden. So it's incredible where you can kind of accidentally pick up these different demographics and audiences. But that's really interesting. Got another great question here from Gwen. What advice would you give for people who want to raise awareness of species that aren't cute and fluffy, like spiders, for example?
Using light and color. I think if you've got a bright, colorful background, and I mean, it's difficult, in my opinion, to make a spider cute. But you know, focusing on all their amazing eyes. Jumping spiders are very adorable, I think. So if you get a macro lens and get really close to them, get a nice, well lit portrait with a colorful background, I'm sure that'll do well. People love butterflies, especially in golden morning light. So there are definitely ways you can use not cute animals to be engaging, but yeah, jumping spiders are really cute.
Yeah, the colours are a really good one. Some of them are just so colourful, and the patterns are just incredible if you get really up close. That's a good tip. This is a great question from Alif. They've asked, how do you manage not being overwhelmed by making all this content and having such a big following across all your platforms?
I am a bit overwhelmed, but I'm slowly sort of getting used to it. I use a desktop app called Trello, and I will have different tasks under each social media platform. And that's one way I sort of manage my business. So I will have, for example, YouTube with all the YouTube videos I want to make. And it's a nice way of visually seeing what I want to do in the future and what content I'd like to make. At the moment, I've been away for a week, so it's been quite difficult to create engaging content whilst I don't have access to internet, or I can't edit photos on my laptop. But I've noticed Twitter now have like Twitter stories, and Instagram obviously have stories, and people love that. A 24-hour short 15-second video clip or just a photo of what you're doing definitely engages people. But I like to write a list every day when I'm working at my desk and set tasks of what video or photos I want to upload in that week. But I'm definitely getting better at managing it all.
Yeah, it's tough. I manage the social media for Back from the Brink, and it is a big ask, and a lot of our channels aren't as big as yours. So, Rana's just asked another question as well. They're interested in your different funding streams. I think you mentioned them a bit in your presentation, but it'd be great if you could just talk a tiny bit more about those.
So I use Patreon, which is a platform. I guess it would be considered as another social media platform. But people basically support you every month with however much they want to support. So I have 3 tiers, £2, £5, and £8. And some people immediately go for 8, or even support with £15, for example. And I never expect anyone to stay for several months, but I've had some Patreon supporters who have stayed since I've started. But at the moment, that is my my sort of constant income stream. So every month I get a payment from Patreon. And the tiers are a bit different, so they can have early access content, or I will share sort of photos a month before I even upload them anywhere onto Instagram. Or, for example, my highest tier, they got a physical calendar posted to them, and I'll be doing that the following year. I also, from the past month, I've started using YouTube ads. And so my Squirrels and Me got, I think it's at 450,000 views. And so for a small amount of views, unfortunately, you can't make them up much. But I'm only seeing like a decent amount that would make it worthwhile monetizing videos, because it is a bit of a pain to skip an ad. And at the start, if I was making only a few dollars, it wouldn't be worthwhile to put that pain on people. But now that I'm having several videos, so just as an example, a video of 400,000 views was about $500. So it is a good amount. It will be taxed by YouTube, but YouTube is actually a very good way of making an income, especially if you can make regular videos. But to make a 30-minute film, which took me a year to produce, I can't keep that up. So I'm hoping to make a video like that maybe every 6 months. That is like a short film that is quite detailed in its story. Other forms of income come from sort of doing talks. I try and ask when I do an article if they can contribute to me sending them photos and creating bespoke text. But recently, a lot of sort of websites don't actually pay for text. So I try and prioritize the one that will pay me. At the start of the viral video, I sort of I struggled to find the difference between an opportunity and sort of exploitation, because I was creating bespoke videos which would take me a couple of days and I would not get paid at all. So now I try and prioritize. Actually, I try to prioritize my own content, so things like Patreon and YouTube and Instagram. But the extra content, like for example, BBC Earth, they paid for my time in the forest, which was great. And so there are different ways of creating an income, but I currently don't do what the traditional type of photographers do, which is sort of, for example, selling a story to a magazine and they will share free double spreads on that story, or stock imagery. I don't do that at all.
Right, that's really interesting. Next question. There's quite a few more. This is brilliant. So nice how many questions have been asked. Emily's asked, what were the main reasons you chose social media to share your work over traditional media such as TV and radio? And do you do any TV or radio at all?
No, I don't do. I mean, I've done small radio interviews, but that's not paid work. That will just be a quick discussion with a radio host. I don't think I've developed my photography and filmmaking enough to be on TV yet. I mean, that would be an amazing opportunity. It hasn't come up at all yet. But I think it is very difficult to get into that field. You need a lot of real experience with a production company to even get into that process of becoming a camera assistant. About a year ago, I did try to apply for a camera assistant role, and they just simply said you need 2 weeks at least in a production company. And for someone who hasn't got a degree in filmmaking or anything, my degree is zoology, so it's biology based. It was very difficult, and so I found using social media. It's still hard work, but I think it was an easier route into making wildlife photography in my career.
Brilliant. Nigel's got a question now. He's asking about how you choose and acquire soundtracks for your videos, and if you have any tips on that.
Yeah, so YouTube, their algorithms are very good at tracking copyrighted audio. And actually, the Squirrels and Me got a strike on one song. And so I had to replace it within YouTube, which unfortunately messed up the audio a little bit, but it still means it's there. But I actually source my non-copyright music from the YouTube audio library. If you just Google it, or if you go into onto the YouTube homepage, and on the left-hand side, if you go down to your studio, there will be a button that says audio library, and there are hundreds of different songs. You can choose the mood, so cinematic or happy, the length of the song. Some of it isn't great, but you can find some really good audio tracks. They don't have any singing, so it's great for YouTube videos. So I use that.
Awesome. We've got another question here, and they're asking about your thoughts on how to start videos. Should people be jumping straight in? Should there be an intro screen? What kind of information do you use at the start?
I've struggled with this, especially when I put my phone up to start vlogging. I'm just like, how do I begin? I usually go straight into it, and then when I edit it together, I will have a short 30-second, this is what's going to happen in the video, because then it flows better that way. But I was actually filming a video yesterday about how to photograph urban squirrels, and the start I was really struggling. It took me about 4 attempts to get the flow of things, and then once you've got the flow of things, you're used to people looking at you in the background. It's a lot easier, but it does take me about 20 minutes to begin, and I usually write a script on my phone, so I know roughly where I'm going, with just rough points. But I find that short summary at the start of the video quite useful for grabbing people's attention.
Brilliant. Deb has asked, does managing your social media impact negatively on the time you can spend taking photographs?
Yes, to be quite simple, which is one of the reasons I left Sweden, just so I would not have the forest right next to me, because it's so easy to go, oh, I'll just go to the forest, take more photos. So I have probably thousands of images from last year that I haven't even looked at, unfortunately, because I haven't had the opportunity. Because when I was living right next to squirrels, it's so easy to just go there and spend a few hours with the squirrels. It's more fun than sitting at a laptop. Sometimes I'd actually bring my laptop to the forest, which was more exciting. Do a bit of both. But yes, I try to have photography days and sort of laptop days, but I love to shoot at morning and evening light. So if I can wake up early, go somewhere for sunrise, and be back for late morning, I still have most of the day to work. Yeah,
Brilliant.
It's a bit of a balance.
Yeah. Ezra's got another great question here. How would you recommend starting out on social media? One platform at a time, or as many as possible, and see what sticks?
I first started with Instagram, and I probably was posting almost every day for about 4 months until I said, okay, I've got a small following now, I'm going to go to another platform. So that's when I went to Twitter, and I started posting every other day. And because Instagram was my priority at the time, I was just posting very random things on Twitter. So a couple of shots of the forest and just a small caption, or a photo of a squirrel and a funny caption, this squirrel did this, or whatever. And then I was getting a bit of engagement, but the engagement really came when I posted that short clip of the video that went viral. And then I gained a following there, and then I was trying to prioritize both. And then I started on YouTube. So at the moment, the time that I actually spend on each platform has sort of leveled out, because I used to spend almost 6 hours a day on Instagram trying to reply to comments, engaging with other people's content, so that it helped promotes my algorithms, so that more people are exposed to my images. But there's no way you can spend all that time on social media and not actually create the content. So now I try to, each time I send about 80 photos to my phone by airdrop. I will plan the rough message I want to put across in each message, in each caption of the photo, and then I will have them in my drafts so they're almost ready. And I like to try and post different content on Twitter, because you might have followers on the same follower on each platform, so it's good to have different content. And then my aim was to try and post on YouTube every 2 weeks, but I can't manage it, so I'm aiming for every 3 weeks.
That's brilliant. Some great tips in there. Alex has asked, what sort of equipment and software do you use to make your videos, and how did you learn to use it?
So in regards to camera equipment, I'll just go through everything. I use a Canon 5D Mark IV, which is a full frame camera. I really like it because it's a touch screen. Well, the screen is, you can touch it, so it's really good for focusing with video. I use a 300mm f2.8 lens, which is great for a forest where it's quite dark, so I can have a wide aperture. I also have a wide angle lens, which can go to 24mm, which is great for capturing the entire forest. I use the Mini Mavic DJI drone, which has recently had a casualty, but fixed with some glue. And in regards to software, I use Lightroom Classic to edit my photos. I do have Photoshop and I know how to use it, but I rarely use it, to be honest. And I will finish all my edits on my phone, because I always put my phone screen down to 80 to 90%, the brightness, because people never look at their phone on full brightness. So then I edit the photo a bit more. So I make it a bit brighter, increase the highlights. This is for social media. So how I edit for a photography competition, for example, is very different to how I would edit for social media. Yeah, that's it. And with I'm very basic with video editing. I use iMovie. Don't judge me. Yeah, it's simple and it's very quick. So I use iMovie.
That's brilliant. That is such a good tip for social media photography, to up the brightness so that it appears brighter on people's devices. I've never thought of that. That's really, really smart. Sally's asked a bit of a fun question here. If you could get into traditional TV camera work without doing the social media avenue, would you still do the social media?
Yeah, I think so. It's so fun interacting with people from all over the world. Yeah, I get lots of strange, wonderful messages about people sharing stories about their local squirrels. So one part of what I love about what I do is actually interacting with individual people from all around the world. And when I was selling my calendars, they were going everywhere. I hit so many continents, and it's incredible to see how many people like squirrels. So I think I would definitely always do the social media.
Yeah, it's fun to build up a community, I imagine, and you've got a big following now, and that's a nice feeling, I think. Right, that is all of the questions. Oh no, here's possibly one more. Oh no, they're just saying that they found your Lightroom tutorial video really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Here is one more question. Have you had any negative experiences with social media, and what are your solutions to it? They've suggested, is the solution just to block?
Definitely, but I think it's quite expected, especially with the viral video. It was, you should leave the baby squirrels to die, and you shouldn't intervene with wildlife ever. And some people saying that if you provide any type of food for a wild animal, it's no longer wild. But I personally think as long as you're only giving a little bit each day and you're not making the animal reliant on the food source, then it's totally okay to feed your local birds or your local squirrels. So with how I deal with this negativity, I usually sometimes if it's because they've received the wrong information, I will try to tell them, for example, someone once commented the use of flash with animals, and I told them, there are ways you can see how the animal will behave with a flash or with a light source before you actually flash them. But usually, well, the squirrels weren't bothered at all. I never ever had any negative experience with using a flash with a squirrel or any animal, to be honest. So there are definitely ways you can make your wildlife photography as ethical and educate people about that. But a lot of the time, if it's weird, unusual comments, I immediately block.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip. So the questions are still coming in, which is so great. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more. So here's one that's just come in. When did you go full time on social media? Was it when you started to have an income, or did you go for it straight after uni? Or
I left uni 3 years ago now, and I was doing my my startup business for most of that. I actually worked at a zoo and the Natural History Museum in London, and then in March I was just like, I've had enough of London. I already had a 2-week experience in Sweden, and I asked the photographer if I could return as a volunteer. And so at the time I was half working on my own content, but also editing his photos and organizing his hard drives and libraries. But that meant I could be in Sweden, in a very glorious forested, snowy Sweden, and so it basically worked out for both of us. Then COVID started, and I got stuck. I had no idea I'd be there so long, but I did take a risk. I quit my jobs. I didn't have any income for several months, and then the viral video happened, and slowly sources of income were coming from my photography for the first time. And then I started a Patreon and sold calendars. But I think I was in a very privileged opportunity where I could just say, I'm going to not have an income for a few months. I'm going to volunteer. The opportunity of volunteering allowed me to work on my social media. If that opportunity hadn't arisen, I probably couldn't just give up everything and do wildlife photography.
Yeah. Right, last question. Are you part of any environmental groups? And I guess, have you got any recommendations of any environmental groups people may or may not have heard of?
Cool question. I was part of the youth board for the London Wildlife Trust. So every few months there was various young people who would meet up, and we would discuss. Oh, my AirPods have died. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. Yeah. I know we've lost you now, actually. No, really sorry, we can't hear you now. See if you can get it back, but if you can't, don't worry, because we've had tons of brilliant questions. But if you can get it back, then that would be fantastic. Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. So I was part of the London Wildlife Trust, and that was great also to get an insight in how they use social media, and it was great to be part of, a young community who were all interested in sort of sharing about nature and conservation and using social media. So I was part of that environmental organization. At university, I was a part of various sort of societies, and when I was in the rainforest working with the spider monkeys,
I was part of a local eco conservation trust in Costa Rica. At the moment, I'm not really part of any or directly involved with any organisations, but I'd really like to use my platform to share more about squirrels, but with conservation messages. So I did try and find a conservation organisation in Sweden, since that's where I was, and it didn't really exist because they're not threatened in Sweden. But in the UK, it's very different. We've got various threats to our red squirrels. So I'd love to get more involved with conservation about red squirrels in the UK, since especially that's where I first saw red squirrels. Yeah.
Awesome. That was a brilliant talk, and it was so great to get so many questions. So a huge thank you to you, Danny. A massive thank you to all the people who have been watching and who have asked questions. We've got a great series of talks coming up, similar to the one that you've seen today, on different topics ranging from art and nature, the climate crisis, how you can get involved with wildlife and in conservation. So check out our series, which I'm going to post a link to now in the chat. And of course, go and follow Danny. She's at Danny Connor Wild. Her channels are brilliant. And then if you like those, then follow us as well. We are back from the brink. And thank you so much to everyone who came again. And that's the end of the stream.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Bye.